Turned into my worst phobia, a crazy man's utopia. If you're lost, no one can show ya, but it sure was glad to know ya. Only poor boys take a chance on the garden's song and dance. Feel her flowers as they wrap around, but only smart boys do without. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter, coming and...
From our secret bunker.
From our secret bunker somewhere in an unnamed city that we've probably mentioned in plenty of previous episodes.
Perhaps.
That's all right.
Who says that our wolf's lair is not somewhere else?
We're not. I don't want to identify with wolves.
Oh,
that makes me think of the Fabian socialists. And,
I think of Warren Zevon.
well, that could be too.
Anyhow,
yes.
No clue on the music this week.
That is The Garden by Guns N' Roses.
And I've heard of them.
Yeah.
They got that Axl guy.
In fact, the part I read was actually sung by Alice Cooper in the song. So
I didn't know Alice Cooper joined up with Guns N' Roses for a while.
Just for that song.
Really?
Yeah. Special guest in the studio.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, school's out.
Yes.
That's on Spotfly, by the way.
Yes, it is.
On our ever-growing list of music for everyone's enjoyment.
Community Solutions music from the podcast playlist, which has all of the music we feature at the beginning of every show, which has something to do with whatever's coming up later.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out, but it doesn't matter. Jay,
yes,
just for our entertainment, we had... interesting things going on in Washington. I'm not sure anybody outside of Washington cared or watched or noticed.
Yeah.
I completely spaced it. I can thank Tucker Carlson for this because I YouTube his opening when I'm at the office the next day because I rarely home at 7 o'clock at night. I rarely see him. And I've always enjoyed him going back to even his days at CNN. And the poor guy had to deal with Bill Press and Paul Begala and Elmer Fudd, James Carville. I mean, guy deserved, poor old Bob Novak, they deserved combat pay. But anyway, and he's ditched the bow tie, which I like too.
Yes, that was good.
But, Robert Mueller.
Oh, boy.
I'm wondering after watching that, I want a new investigation. I want an investigation on who actually wrote this report.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Mueller seemed to have no idea. Now, I don't expect him to memorize it. I don't expect, anything like that. But he seemed confused as to what was contained in the report that bears his name. Now, let me tell you, if a public document bears my name, I'm going to know about it.
Yeah.
Okay, but my take was, I want to know who wrote this. Who wrote this report?
Well,
I'm sure
he didn't write it. He had all these people that...
Yeah, who are the ghostwriters?
Well, his team, I assume. They came with their evidence and their interviews and whatever, and I imagine that they put it all into a package. I don't know if they had like one editor over all of it,
Huh. That's interesting. But I predicted... when this initial thing came out, that this would die a slow, loud, and painful death. Mm-hmm. I think yesterday we buried it completely. I know there are some that are still in denial, and I don't mean a river in Egypt.
Yes.
But what is this? What is this standard that the president has to be fully exonerated from? Name a prosecutor who exonerates someone completely.
Right.
It is not up to somebody to prove their innocence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it is up to somebody to prove guilt.
Right.
So, what is this obsession with getting Mueller to say that? Is that just an optic? Is that just to play on a commercial next year? I mean, what is that? I mean, poor old Jerry Nadler between donuts, it's the only thing he did. He wasted his entire time trying to word parse. And, at first Mueller wouldn't play footsie with him, and then he kind of did. I mean, how much did you sit and watch? Now, I know you're not the type to lay around the house all day. But
no, I'm not. But when I was getting ready in the morning, I had it on, and I probably caught 45 minutes or so of it, I guess. And you see some of the back and forth. And you see the Republicans coming with hard questions and saying, well, they weren't asking about the report. They were asking about why certain things were omitted from the report. Like, okay, you talk about this meeting at Trump Tower on this day with the Russian ambassador, but you did not talk about the meeting the day before with the DNC, and you didn't talk about the day after
the
stuff with Christopher Steele, and he couldn't answer any of that stuff. Then you have the Democrats come up and they basically just read from the report. Is that what you wrote? Yeah, that's what I wrote.
Well, you got old Roger Stone out there being threatened with, like life in jail. The guy's like 75.
Yeah,
and meantime, you mentioned the Steele guy. Where's he in this? Where is the spying on the Trump campaign?
Yeah,
I mean, who's the and here's what also I want to know. When did he reach a conclusion that there was no quote unquote collusion, whatever that means?
Yeah, because
that's what he was investigating to do. It's not investigate until you find something. You just look hard enough.
Right.
Okay, you have a purview. This is what here's a special prosecutor.
Yeah.
Or whatever you want to call it. Special counsel. So it's not, and this is the problem with the independent statutes. It's unchecked power. Power of subpoena, they don't have to get anything from a judge. I mean, they have just, they can interview somebody, ask them the same questions 200 times. I mean, this is the problem that this runs into, is they're going to investigate till they find something.
Yeah.
They can find that, somebody was late on their child support payments, and that is grounds for, you didn't tell me that, so that's obstruction of justice.
Right.
I mean, basically, that's the charges against Roger Stone.
Right.
Is that he didn't mention a phone call or something, and what they're doing to him is really terrible, because he is forced, because this can go on for an indefinite length of time.
Yes.
He is he's basically been bankrupted in legal fees because he can't fight these people.
Right.
So, I mean, it's disgusting. It's terrible. Robert Mueller looks like he's, checked out a little bit. I mean, it just seems like he's. I think some thought he'd come in like John Wayne and put the nail in this president's coffin. And I really think it was. But we talked about this months ago. This is not going to go away in the short term. And
no. But I think that's
even NBC, had to. Poor old Chuck Todd was out there trying. You could see him thinking of some spin, and he couldn't think of any.
Right.
It was pretty bad to watch. I mean, when they can't apologize for the left in Congress, it's been a rough day.
Yeah.
So like I said before, I think this goes away. I think the president's path to re-election continues to open up. I am entertained to a point listening to his opponents talk about which one's a bigger communist.
Yes.
But, it's... it was pretty... It just goes to show the bubble that they live in Washington. While people are homeless, while vets aren't being taken care of, while people are struggling to pay for college, even though we have a good job market and economy, and we do. There's no question about it. But we got bigger problems than what they're focused on. And you look at the record of this Congress for 6 months, tell me one thing they've done.
I can't tell you anything they've done.
I can't either.
Well, they know they can't get any laws passed because everything they want to pass has to go through the Senate, and it's not gonna fly.
But
that's all they can do.
But that's where you take your issues again to the voters.
Right.
You pass everything, and you go to the voters and say, if you want this stuff, okay, you're going to have to vote for these people for the Senate, this person for president. But that's not what they're articulating.
Well, and that's been our complaint here at the state level for how long? It's like, the Republicans here don't do much of anything except capitulate, and they should be passing things to restrict the power of the Met Council.
Sure.
and
pass
whatever.
it, make the governor veto it.
Yeah.
And then say, see, who's standing in the way? You make an issue out of it. And, yeah, I mean, there's just... To me, you spend all that time and money getting a branch of government, and then all you want to do is grab the gavels and issue subpoenas. I think it will backfire, but I think, and part of me wants it to continue.
I want it,
and part of me thinks though that it's sad for the nation. It's not the good thing for the nation. And I care more about the country than I care about winning political points. And I think it's bad for the country. So, I mean, but this is what happens. I mean, you lose an election, and from day one you start talking about impeachment.
Well, I mean, one could argue that Congress is bad for the country.
When Kim Jong-un has a higher approval rating than the House of Representatives, I would agree. I mean, when the Democrats took over Congress in 2006, I saw a poll. They were 4 points behind Ahmadinejad in Iran. Okay, so I mean, that shows the level of dysfunction and the level of there's no desire to change it among anybody.
Right.
So it's kind of like,
So like we've said, let's fill up the city council so those people can go to the state houses and those people can go to the federal houses.
Yeah, if they choose. I mean, I don't know that I'd choose that. But,
I wouldn't either. But there are some sadistic people out there that are.
Speaking of sadistic people,
yes,
that brings us to Golden Valley.
Oh boy,
we've picked on the Golden Valley City Council once or twice on this show.
Yeah.
Shep Harris announcing he's going to run for another term, by the way.
Well, I'm sure he is. There's nothing open yet that he wants.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've seen that, but
I did not.
Yes, he is going for his third term, I want to say, but they are considering, what are they considering, Jay? Tobacco 21. Got to copy St. Louis Park, got to copy Robbinsdale. Everybody else is doing it.
Well, and here's what I think, that Golden Valley, here's your next ordinance, that this should go over like gangbusters. You're going to put in an ordinance to change the name to North St. Louis Park. Yeah. How about that?
Or Lake Badaskak, or whatever it is. Matawaki.
Bidet Makaska.
Bidet. Lake Bidet. I don't know what. But I mean, so of course they're copying or trying to copy.
Right.
And here's what I love. I don't love it. But they have a public forum on August 5th coming up here. Those who live and work in the city are welcome to the forum. I guess nobody else is.
Yes.
To learn about the issue and voice their opinion. But let's examine who's running this meeting. Here's who's invited. City officials, representatives from the Hennepin County Department of Health, and the Minnesota chapter of the Association of Non-Smokers. Well, that sounds like a fair and balanced...
Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, once again, what does this tell me? Tells me they're going to do this. They're going to go on August 5th to get the sales pitch. It's not about, they don't care what your opinion is. No. They've already decided what to do. They need to sell you on it.
Yeah.
This is like, we're gonna put up the senior housing over here, and we're gonna have an extra high fence. So you're not gonna see the seniors walking around in their wrinkled old bodies. This is we're gonna have a path in between this or that, and we'll plant trees here, and they're gonna make pretty colors out of it, and it's the sales pitch.
Right.
It's not, well, do you want this or not? Do you want to live next to a tall building or have a different zoning 5 feet from your property? Yeah, we don't care whether you want this or not.
Yeah.
We're going to sell it to you. Market it, put a label on it. It's kind of like the way, mainstream music is done today, I hate to say.
Yeah.
Put a pretty face on an album,
yep.
And stamp it and sell it.
Yeah.
So you can also take an online survey. You can take an online survey.
I'm sure that they'll be weighed fairly and appropriately.
Well, I'm actually looking at it right now.
Ooh. Well,
should
what
the
does it
city
say?
should the city of Golden Valley prohibit the sale of well, it doesn't let me answer.
Well, that's some survey. They really do have their answers already, don't they?
Well, and again, these are misleading questions.
Yeah.
Should the city of Golden Valley regulate the sale of flavored tobacco? That's already regulated.
Yeah.
What do you mean regulated? Should the city regulate the sale of menthol flavored tobacco? Should the city require a minimum price? God, they can require that.
Price?
Yeah.
Cigarettes are going to be $25.
It's cigars. It's cigars that are really the intent of that.
Well, I would assume e-cigarettes to some degree as well.
Yeah, I think that's described as flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't let me answer. I want to answer.
Where did you find this?
That was on the. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. No.
Oh, there it is. Take the survey here, and it's in black with everything else in blue, and you can barely tell it's a link. That one.
Yeah.
For our readers, we're looking at the hometownsource.com for.
By the way, I'm putting that I live in Golden Valley.
Oh, my word. In the article, it's called Golden Valley Leaders Want Feedback in Preparation of Tobacco 21 Public Forum. So, yeah, there is a survey, third paragraph up from the bottom. So that's definitely something that, city surveys, as we've talked about in the past, are always really good.
City surveys are a good way to ask a question in a way that you want it answered.
Yeah, so a minimum price for tobacco products sold in packages of 3 or less. Well, that sounds really specific and random. We're not going to put a minimum on tobacco products where there's 25 in a pack, but hey, you got 3 in a pack, we're going to put a minimum price on that.
Again, I think cigars are the target of that.
Could be that. I don't know what else it could be. What would you call pipe tobacco? Is that you have 1 in a pack? It's just one big old clump,
I guess.
Look,
cigarettes were $2.89 a pack last time I bought them.
Wow,
it's been a while. Not to date. So.
Yeah, I don't know what they're up to, but
you got August 15th. You got a great, well and balanced forum, though.
Yes.
I mean, you're going to get Hennepin County there, the city of Golden Valley, and all the diversity on that council, and of course the Minnesota Association of Non-Smokers, which I'm sure has no bias whatsoever in it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So beware, this is a sales pitch, typical of cities, typical of Golden Valley. Wouldn't know a good idea if it ran them over. So you got that to look forward to too.
Yeah.
Choo-choo. So you've got
Absolutely.
City of Golden Valley and Robert Mueller we just talked about there. But we want some good news. England.
Yeah.
Boris Zukov.
I don't think it's Boris
not Boris Zukov.
No.
Who's the other guy? Yeltsin.
Yeah.
Yeltsin was...
No.
Hey, I've never seen an English guy named Boris before. Is that something? I mean, that's a Russian name.
It is a Russian name.
Not Boris Zukov?
I wouldn't trust him. Boris Zukov and Nikolai Volkov.
Yeah, Nikolai was a Republican, since passed away, but I think Boris.
I can understand that coming from Russia, where the Soviet Union.
Lithuania, I think, is where he was originally from.
From the Soviet Union, where that would be.
Of course, I could totally understand that. But Boris Johnson elected as the new prime minister over in our friends across the sea, succeeding Theresa May, and I think we're going to have a good ally in Mr. Johnson.
I think so as well.
So maybe we'll.
He sounds determined to get out of the European Union, so that's good.
Anybody who wants that is a friend of mine. So I think the European Union is one of the worst things ever put on this globe.
Yeah.
So that and the UN, I think, are
absolutely.
They could take the League of Nations too if that's still around.
I think they got rid of that for the UN. It's like
they made it worse, if you ask me.
So it's like we go from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution. We get better, and they go from the League of Nations to the UN. Oh,
yeah, terrible.
That's
So So a little bit of a mild upset. I mean, we were led to believe that the Brexit folks and the Theresa May had been weakened a little bit in recent months.
Yeah,
and that they want a pretty. Of course, it's not true. I mean, it's like
the media. What do you expect?
Yeah, I mean, we all know what that really meant. That meant that there was an underlying current to give a middle finger to the media, like there was here in 2016. And so they won actually the seats in the House of Commons by quite a wide margin as well. I mean, 70 seats, I want to say, or something. I thought I read. So it doesn't seem like the opinions there have had much. Again, I think like the United States, the loud voices are on the left, and that's countered by the rest of the country. It's kind of similar to the way it is here. So, I don't want to say I'm surprised, but I think a lot of people are surprised at the results.
I think so. For those who aren't paying attention, it didn't sound like from those that were over there and kind of had a finger on the pulse, like they're that surprised. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think that it'll be a better.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting that people follow the politics of other countries. I think it's a small world now, and following those elections and what's happening around the world is. I don't think it has much reflection on the United States. That's my opinion. I think countries decide their own people and don't really care what other countries. I know I don't when I go and vote, so I assume they don't either. Interesting developments there, and I look forward to a good. I can't remember how long they serve, and I want to say it's 3 years, but I could be wrong there. Maybe it's 4. I don't know how often they do parliamentary stuff there, but it's funny to watch. If you ever watch the parliament in action, how they all make these moaning sounds, and stand up and stand down. And the Canadian parliament, I think, is kind of a knockoff of England, and you'll see similar things. So it's kind of like watching a zoo or something. They, somebody's hungry in the corner. They stand up and make some goofy noise. So it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting. They've transitioned from a monarchy over there, and I would say kind of a constitutional monarchy, to more of the queen is sort of the head of state, but doesn't have the political power that the predecessors had.
Right.
Going back to George and Queen Victoria and all of that. So very, very changed a lot over time.
Right.
So.
Well, it shall be interesting nonetheless.
Always interesting.
Yes. Which leads us to something that I don't know if it's interesting or not, but we're going to make it. It's not interesting. We're going to do our best to make it interesting for you this week.
You and I can make talking about two sloths interesting, but this is a special interesting here that we're going to try to tackle. Because Jay, I think that people on our way of thinking get a rap that we don't care about the environment, and we don't care about I don't know anybody who's for destroying something.
Right.
I believe resources should be used, replenished, not abused. That's my position.
Mine as well.
Oil is something Mother Nature makes.
Yes.
Human beings don't make it. We use it. It's no different than using water or trees or cattle or whatever else, but I believe that I don't want oil spills. I don't want our fresh water to be wasted. I don't want trees to be destroyed for no good reason, or not replanted somewhere. I do think we ought to have places that are landmarked and all that kind of stuff, doing it the way President Taft wanted to do it, not the way President Roosevelt wanted to do it. I just had to throw that in there for one of the most underrated presidents in American history.
I would agree.
Taft. Yeah,
people think about him getting stuck in a bathtub,
and that's so unfair because I've outweighed him before. Okay, I mean,
they're small bathtubs.
Yeah, and he was like 6'3". I mean, he wasn't
a big guy.
He wasn't a small. I think he is the third or fourth tallest. I want to say President Obama was pretty tall. I think President Lincoln is still the tallest.
Probably,
And in his day, he at 6'4" or 6'5", he had to be like 7 feet tall.
That's true.
But so
that hat didn't help either.
Yeah, you see those pictures next to George McClellan in the Civil War, and McClellan is either 4'8" or Lincoln's 6'10", one of the two.
Yeah.
But anyhow, all those assertions are total BS.
Mm-hmm.
And believing in limited government and responsibility of the individual. This is where I really clash with environmentalists who always think that the collective is more important than the individual. And we have a law, we have a constitution set up to protect individual rights. But yet everywhere you look, Jay, these environmental laws and these... It seems like you're getting hit every day by a different group or a different foundation or a different 527 group or a different whatever that is pushing or getting or has their fingers in some kind of law, regulation, volunteer, air quotes, group. And what we find, and you and I stumble across this stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're never done. It's just amazing how you can shoot at 2,000 targets, figuratively.
Right.
But I mean, and this is what we find again this week.
Well, and
it's a conspiracy. It's conspiracy.
I mean, we're recording episode 125, and I don't know. I mean, for the most part, we really haven't done certain things more than once or twice. Topic wise.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. There's,
we'll go back to New Hope sometime.
Yeah. But again, a lot of people think of local government, and it's like, it's that guy's down the street with his loud dogs, or that guy won't cut his grass, or that guy I don't like
sits
him.
on his deck naked. There's just...
and there is so much more to what happens on these nonpartisan races that it is super complicated. And if you don't have somebody that understands it, breaking it down for you, you're going to go on thinking that it's just about dogs and height of the grass and did you shovel, and it's so much more than that. And I know that we've been doing this a long time, and we're still learning. We still haven't spilled but just a fraction of our knowledge upon you, the listener.
That's why the teacher always beats the student, by the way, because the student knows everything. The teacher knows everything the student knows, but the student doesn't know everything the teacher knows.
Right.
But see, here's the thing. Every time we turn around, like I said, there's another group or entity or whatever that comes up with some silly idea, and then another city does it, and another city does it, and another city does it. The same dimwit is pushing all of this.
Yes.
Now, what we have to share on the outset, you and I were talking off the air, Jay, about how much teeth is in what we're going to say.
Yeah, and not how many teeth are in the mouths of the people who
It's not a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Not that many tooths. Okay, but what laws like this potentially could lead to?
Right, and I think that this one we're actually kind of on the front edge of, and we're catching this as it's being implemented. What it's going to look like in 10 years from now is a lot different than what it looks like today.
Okay, so explain to the audience here, Jay, What are we talking about? We're talking about energy benchmarks or energy efficient tracking,
yes,
or whatever you want to call it. Now, that may sound totally innocent. Mm-hmm. It may sound well-intentioned, just like a lot of things government does.
Yes.
But first off, just say exactly what we're looking at here, and then I'll go off the rails.
Is that how it's going to work today?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So energy benchmarking. Basically, you are looking at certain criteria, and they're keeping track of things like meter readings and condition of buildings, things like that. And it's over time. And so you're looking at, of course, electricity and water. Consumption, right. Consumption. And then, with the condition of buildings, insulation, windows.
Okay, so who's doing this? Let's start with who's doing it.
Well,
how'd this get going?
How did it get going?
Well, we all know that answer, but I mean, there's a couple cities in Minnesota that have started.
There's actually more than a couple. And let me go back. I mean, before we found that there are cities that have built this into their environmental plan. We have talked about this before.
Yeah.
And with Green Step, the Green Step cities here in Minnesota, anytime you go into level 4 or 5 of Green Step, you have to track and benchmark your output. You're looking to reduce emissions, and you have to report that to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency.
Okay, now who's doing that? Government or citizens or the city as a whole?
The city as a whole has to track that. Now, granted, that doesn't really include residential buildings. That doesn't really include commercial buildings per se. Some of that, I think, especially now as we're going to talk about today, is being added into that. Yeah. Especially as more regulations are being written that, especially if you're building new, but I suppose as well if you're going to retrofit or anything, that you have to go back and you have to make sure that your insulation levels are
There might be a grandfather clause or something.
Right. There might be for some of it, but I think ultimately that there won't be. I mean, really what they're looking to do is reach a certain emissions level by 2050. That's what a lot of the cities in the state are held to. So to do that, they have to find a way.
Okay, so let me translate that.
Yeah.
You want a permit to build a new home in City A. Mm-hmm. City A comes in and says, well, you can do it, but you have to do this and this and that and all that.
Right.
So they're basically adding those costs, if you will, onto the builder. Then the builder passes them off onto the buyer, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. And then every time there's a sale of a building, that can also be inspected, gone through, looked at. Now, again,
yes.
The thing about these laws is they always start with the big evil corporations, but nothing stops them from putting this all the way down to any old single family home.
Right, and that's not an exaggeration. Through the articles that I've read, they're already not only doing commercial buildings, but they're also doing multifamily high-density buildings, and it sounds like...
So that's apartments, townhomes,
yep.
senior buildings.
Yep, but they don't stop there. They're not... Doesn't seem like they're doing single-family homes yet, but they intend to.
Huh. What a shock. I'm shocked. And, once again, these things sound so innocent. We can sit here all day long and, pick on a city like Minneapolis. I mean, what they're doing is as always, crazy. Mm-hmm. But other cities have jumped on this too. And, Edina is now one. Not a huge shock to you and me.
Right.
But I bet there'd be some people out there who'd be, kind of like, really? They've adopted these kind of things as well. And this is very recently, June 4th, 2019, Edina became the second city in Minnesota to require buildings larger than 25,000 square feet to benchmark their energy data. So their energy data has to be recorded by the building or by the city. I'm really not sure. But they are sustainably conscious, by the way. Just to let everybody know. And they've got to report. Here's what I don't understand. If they know that these buildings in Edina account for 60% of the energy use, why do they need to report it?
Right. I don't have a good answer for that.
Yeah, and this is also to be made public.
Oh, yes. Yes. Says here, and you've all seen the Energy Star logo here and there. And for those of you that aren't sure what that is and you've seen it, the Energy Star, I have it here somewhere, is, there it is. Energy Star is the trusted government-backed symbol for energy efficiency, helping us all save money and protect the environment through energy-efficient products and practices. It was established to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and other pollutants caused by the inefficient use of energy and make it easy for consumers to identify and purchase energy-efficient products that offer savings on energy bills without sacrificing performance, features, and comfort. And so this label is the EPA chooses what products earn that label, which is nice. Our friends over at the Environmental Protection Agency who do such wonderful work.
Yeah. Certainly like to destroy that.
Yeah. Anyways, in Edina, so what they're looking to do, like you said, it will require owners of existing commercial and multifamily buildings over 25,000 square feet to benchmark their buildings' energy use through the Environmental Protection Agency's online Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is a tool through Energy Star. So the buildings will track this, and they will put it into this portfolio manager through Energy Star, which will then give them a rating. Says Edina's 31st city in the nation and the second in Minnesota to require benchmarking through this program.
Yeah, and of course I love how they got Centerpoint Energy and Excel Energy on board with this, like we have a choice.
Right.
I mean, come on here. How fair is that? You know, knowledge is power, I'm quoting. Benchmarking gives building owners and the public a new tool to understand and promote energy efficiency, says Carolyn Jackson, the chair of the Edina Energy and Environment Commission. Another call to join commissions out there, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely.
Building owners will receive training and onboarding support. In other words, we're going to tell you how to do what we want. This program shows 1 to 2% savings annually. Ooh! Yippee! Wow! That's like the temperature going up 0.25 degrees. But Jay, I mean, my question is they make this sound very innocent.
Yeah.
Oh, we're just collecting data. We're just showing you how to do things.
All right. But, well, and this is going to spread. I mean, Hennepin County has organized a collaborative and identified a consultant that will help manage and administer the benchmarking program. So they're not going to stop with Edina and Minneapolis.
Well, they're not going to stop with benchmarking. This is going to become okay. They're going to establish. I mean, this could even get so crazy as to establish maximums of how much energy. Oh, okay. Well, you only need to use blah 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 per square foot.
Right.
What's to stop them? From taking this even further. You mentioned Green Step. I mean, the level 4 and level 5 of basically all data. I mean, first off, why does this need to be made public?
Well,
I mean, my water bill is not. Nobody can access that.
Right.
What is the point of making this public? Why don't you just, if you're really interested in, I mean, is it all trying to shame people into doing something? I mean, if you're really interested in helping, consulting, I'm all for energy efficiency.
Right.
Okay. I think the individual is where the power lies, if you want, not making every building the same. You know, buildings have different uses, and how you can regulate all of that to be the same seems impossible.
Right.
If I got one big building that builds cars, and next door is a supermarket, and next door to that is, an Arby's, you got three completely different things. I mean, how do you regulate them all to be the same?
I don't think you can. But, right now, it's going to be a bunch of suggestions, and they're going to take this rating, this number, this total, and they say that they want to use it for renters and for people looking to own a home so that they can make an informed decision on what they're moving into, so that they know whether they will be able to save money and be environmentally conscious and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't think that people aren't going to look at this list and say, hey, did you know the Target down on 4th Street and Broadway, they came in really poorly on this list. We need to go picket them, or we need to, You've seen what these environmental groups do.
No, these environmental groups are capable of anything. Absolutely anything. Nothing they do would surprise me. Well, I mean, here's the other thing. Okay? Now that it's made its way to the suburbs, what do you want to bet St. Louis Park takes this up?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they already have warrantless inspections. Golden Valley, our buddies at New Hope, they want to get to that step 4 and 5 really bad.
Yep.
Robbinsdale will take this up. Bloomington will take this up. What in the name of Little Green Apples is going to stop this from spreading like wildfire? We need Smokey the Bear and his cousin Horny to come out here and stop this wildfire. That's a great outdoors reference.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, but again, these housing and building regulations, the World Green Building Council, I'm sure, is where this LEED standards and stuff like that is where a lot of this stuff comes from.
Right.
And, and I'll tell you something else, too. City by city is how this is going to happen. If this were being debated at a state or federal government, a lot of eyes would be on it. This is the kind of thing that gets passed and nobody notices, nobody sees it until they sell their house or buy a house or lease a building. Then all of a sudden, all the crap they have to do comes to the top.
Right.
So, you're going to see this implemented slowly and added to over time. It's just like putting a tax on something.
Right.
First it's 1%, then it's 3%, then it's 5%, pretty soon it's 99%.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of, like with Green Step, it's what the government is managing and controlling these numbers, and they're the ones gathering the information. But I will bet that in the not too distant future, it will add, there'll be programs for cities to adopt these benchmarking ordinances that'll probably be come up with through the League of Minnesota Cities, and then they are going to be asked to enroll the various businesses around town to track, and there'll be programs, it might even do the Energy Star tracking, and
it might even be subsidized.
And if you get a certain percentage, that'll count as a step completed toward whatever, because that'll be getting your city to do it. If you're in favor of it and you're running a city, that's the easy part. It's getting the private citizens to report on themselves that is the tricky part. But all these cities are already level 4 and 5. You got Burnsville, Eagan, Eden Prairie.
No, these people are doing what now?
So they have to track right now based on the best practices and actions and green step that they've completed. Edina.
They're tracking government stuff.
Yeah, Elk River, Falcon Heights, Golden Valley, Hutchinson, Isanti. So not just the metro guys. Yeah. Matamidi, Maplewood, Minnetonka, New Brighton, Oakdale, Red Wing, Rochester, St. Anthony, St. Paul, Shoreview, White Bear Lake, and Woodbury.
So they're already tracking all the government stuff.
All the government stuff, but I think to some degree, though, they're also looking at some private stuff, like when it comes to parking minimums and maximums, when it comes to the things they have already put in place for the businesses in their cities, like recycling waste, recycling air, the
composting,
the wastewater stuff. Yeah.
Well, and keep in mind too, when it comes to something like water, they already have that access. Mm-hmm. They know how many gallons of water are going through a building, because you can't get a permit unless you're on city utilities.
Right.
So then they write an ordinance to make all that public. I mean, it's crazy. Where are your private property rights?
Now, I don't know if they're going to say, here's how much water XYZ is using. They may just publish the ratings. This business is a 5. This one is a 2, And,
of course, nobody understands what that means. I mean, you have to dive into it to understand it.
Right. But it won't matter. The environmentalists will just run with it. Oh, they got a bad score. We're going to go put some pressure on them.
Yeah, we're going to call them out on something or something like that. I mean, but I mean, it's pretty scary what they can, and they can always use a sale, a lease signing, somebody doing an addition on something as an excuse to come in and do all this crap.
Oh, absolutely. And this is just, I know, we're saying, of course, Minneapolis and St. Paul are already on board, and, they're
Minneapolis and St. Paul, you might as well just make it like a Jim Jones commune there, because you have no rights whatsoever.
Right. Well, here's the thing, though.
Just don't drink the punch.
Well, yeah. A lot of stuff comes out of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and they start to get used in the suburbs around them. And so we still have to keep an eye on what they do. While it often ends up being like to insane levels, and the suburbs sometimes don't take that leap unless you're St. Louis Park or North St. Louis Park or New Hope or something. But they currently have written ordinances, and in those ordinances, it expands commercial business benchmarking. Includes larger multifamily buildings, and adds new requirements to pre-sale inspection reports to cover things like windows, insulation, heating systems, with the intention of giving renters information and an energy score with any list of suggested upgrades.
Yeah, suggested.
Right.
I love that. You want a permit? Here's what you're doing.
Right. And I don't know if any of you know this, Minneapolis has a goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050 compared to 2006 levels. You know what?
I'll tell you the best way to do that. The best way to do that is not let anybody on the city council or the mayor speak. That way they're not admitting carbon dioxide.
I have a plan.
Which is not a pollutant anyway.
That everybody in the first ring suburbs should just idle their cars a lot, and then hope that the wind just blows it all over to Minneapolis.
Yeah, I love how car idling gets attacked.
I do too. So they're passing these ordinances, and they want to keep data from utilities on per square foot energy use on smaller rental properties. They want to, for home buyers, the ordinance would expand truth in housing inspections. So you got to have more inspections as a seller.
Which are all rolled into the cost of buying a home.
Right. So it would,
they're already inspected. No bank will hand out a loan till they look at that house.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Absolutely.
It's a duplicate process, as we went through in Crystal when they got rid of their
point of sale
inspections. It's already being done.
Absolutely. But, this is what Minneapolis is doing, and it will leak out to the surrounding area. It just will. I mean, they think that this is going to reduce carbon emissions, and I don't know. When you have people that are already, for the most part, using LED lighting and stuff like that in their commercial buildings, and
you're almost forced to today.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're going to get to the point where you're regulating. It's like not being able to water your lawn on certain days. I mean, it's going to get to the point where you can't turn lights on in this room for the next 12 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, that might sound funny, but is it really?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who's to say it can't, they can use the environment to pass anything.
Right.
I mean, look at how they got light bulbs in the first place. It was, we're going to regulate the kind of light bulbs. We're going to jack the price up. And you're going to pay them because we're not going to give you a choice anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Huh.
Yeah.
But, I mean, everybody has to live somewhere. Everybody, for the most part, has to work somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so these costs are are unavoidable to be put on all of us.
Yes.
And they're going to use any old thing as an excuse.
Right.
This window is not up to snuff here, or this, this there's a crack in your wall or something, so you got to tear the whole thing down and redo everything. I don't know. It can get that crazy, can't it?
Yeah, and right now it's all about providing a report to people that want to rent or buy a home so that they have good.
No, it's not. It's the report then is going to be used to pass new law.
Exactly where I was headed.
Yeah, they're going to look at that and go, okay.
Yeah, here's where our problem areas are.
Right. These 10 buildings are doing what we tell them. These 10 buildings aren't. So we're going to write something in the law that forces them to comply.
Yep. You will not be able to sell a building unless the following things are completed. Or, they'll be able to do that kind of stuff.
All, of course, in the name of saving the porcupine caribou or something, right?
Yep.
Or having that North Pole, so it's instead of being 27 below, it's 26 and a half, and we just can't have that because it's melting.
There just aren't enough polar bears. We need more polar bears to roam the countryside and eat small children.
Why don't you talk to Al Gore? He'll just put some more in his movies, copy and paste.
Yes.
Some more. I mean, watching the Wizard of Oz looked more real. So yeah, I mean, scary stuff. I mean, the environmental police at one day was a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's very real.
Yeah.
The food police, the thought police. I mean, those were all things we laughed at.
Mm-hmm.
It can't happen here.
It sure is. All of it.
Yeah, it's beyond not happening. I mean, it's happening every day. And you look at a place like St. Louis Park that supports warrantless rental searches.
Yes.
I mean, the city thinks they can go in anytime they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you all know what happens when it's inevitable discovery. You walk into to serve an arrest warrant for criminal A, walk into his house. Oh, you just happen to look around, and find this or that laying around, and charge them with 5 other things. Well, what stops the city from saying, "Hey, we're going to look at you're going to put up a new window here or something, and then we're going to inspect every other place of your house."
Right.
It's kind of like when you take your car in for an oil change, and they try to get you to spend $1,000 every time on a bunch of things that aren't. I don't know who does that, Tires Plus, but it's the same kind of thing, except they're going to have the power to make you do it.
Right.
So, very, very scary out here. I mean, granted, Minneapolis, I mean, I think I'd rather live in East Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, the stuff there starts trickling out, and somebody just, has to justify their own existence. I love Edina. I don't love Edina. But
No.
Edina has, what do they have that I was just giggling about before we went on the air? A sustainability manager.
Yeah.
They actually have a position for that. Some sort of, the sustainable, Tara Brown, the sustainability manager. And of course, they're just working to improve energy use. It's nothing more than that, right?
It got to be sustainable.
I hate that word.
I know. But
I don't think there's a word I don't hate too many words, but that's a word I hate.
yeah, but this energy stuff, it does that. I mean, remember, I don't remember the number. It was something like around 1,000 employee hours it was going to take. Maybe it wasn't quite that many for New Hope to get from level 3 to level 4 in the Green Step program.
Are they going to get to that without collectivizing the trash?
Well, I don't know if they will. Yeah. But, this is the thing, that you have to add employee hours, you have to add staff. Government gets more expensive the more you do this environmental stuff as well.
Oh, you mean they're not making $12 an hour?
Well, no, of course not. They've got para. They've got...
Sure, you go work for Bernie Sanders and you only make that.
Yeah, but this is what happens with this environmental stuff, though. And it's nothing new. I mean, for years, they've been sticking their nose into our private business. Remember back in Crystal, I'm trying to remember what year it was, when they did all the sump pump inspections and the footing drain inspections.
2008, 9, 10, somewhere around there.
Yeah, and they
remember when they did my house.
They wanted to put in the new water meters, and they were using that as a pretext to go in and inspect for footing drains and sump pumps. And... remember my battle with the old mayor of Crystal?
I remember them not knowing the difference between an arrest warrant and a search warrant.
Yes.
You know what, Jay? I'll admit you were so over their heads that.
I found
you
case
got
law from the Supreme Court that had to do exactly with the same thing that they were doing in the city. It got to a point where they threatened to shut my water off and make me dig a septic in a well, and then
but then that's against city regulations
right.
too. You'd have had to take bottled water and put it all in your bathtub to go take a bath.
But they wanted to come in because supposedly the septics were bad for the environment because if the sewer backed up and stuff like that, it was going to cause a problem and whatever. But I know there were problems with that no matter what, that when they were replacing and doing the road maintenance.
I had that at my old house. I had that. It backed up about once a year. I had to get it cleaned out.
Yeah.
I mean, tree roots were causing it in my front yard. So, of course, it would have been easy since my old house was on top of an aquifer that I couldn't have access to.
Right.
That entire northeast part, of Crystal is underneath a huge aquifer.
Right.
That nobody has access to. So, I mean, that's another issue in of itself. But yeah, again, it was another excuse to go in, and they're going to change the water meters. You don't read them outside anymore. You read them. They read them from City Hall. It was a satellite, right? That they did, and so but that was just. I remember I had to take a day off work for that.
Yeah. But while
they told me when they were coming in.
Right.
They didn't say when can you be home. It was, we're going to be here at 10 a.m. on February 30th.
Right. So while we're in there, we're going to look for these other things.
I don't remember. Funny, I don't remember them saying anything to me about that stuff. I mean, they weren't there that long.
No, they weren't there that long. But I remember getting into a little bit of a.
You're one of your first tiffs. One of your.
No, that was after the County Road 81
Yeah, that
stuff.
was kind of in between that. I think it was in between the. 81 and the petition that we signed. So
yeah, it was, and that was that was eye-opening for me as well. And I don't talk about that story much when we tell our story out and about, but yeah, I mean, I spoke in front of the city council, I don't know how many times, and brought Supreme Court case law into it, and all of these other things. And you need to have a search warrant, or you need to have a warrant to be able to look in my home, stating exactly what you're looking for. And
all warrants do that, by the way.
Yeah.
If you look at a warrant from a court, it will state why they're there, what they're allowed to seize, it will all be, not that I know by experience, but it will all be spelled out right there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a blank check to look around is different.
But that's when
especially when there's no presumption of guilt.
Right. We should be innocent till proven guilty. Yeah. But that's when our illustrious former mayor said that we can't just go around arresting everybody in the town. Yeah, search warrant, not an arrest warrant. Look it up. So in the end, I did end up backing down because I wasn't going to dig a well or dig a septic system, and I didn't want it shut off. But I was trying to prove a point, impress a point that all of these new metrics to try and track and trace what we do.
Why don't you just put a chip inside me?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
They're starting to do that in Europe in some places.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't want that.
It's to that point.
Yeah.
You know, why don't you just why don't we all be the Truman Show? You know, as weird as that sounds, it's close to that.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you go that you're not in front of a camera?
Yeah, I mean, you really can't live off the grid if you live in a city. You can't.
There was a day.
Mind your own business.
There was a day you could go out west on the frontier and kind of lose your identity and start your life over and all that. Where can you do that now?
I don't know. Nowhere here.
I guess you'd have to go out to like Yellowstone or something and just disappear.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I guess so.
Even then, how do you do it? You have to have a place to live. You got to have a way to get from point A to point B. You've got to, have a job. You can't you
have to have enough money to buy a small island, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose.
I don't know
what it is, but it's kind of, the world's getting scarier and scarier. I mean, and with these new regulations and these types of things, once again, it's the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think the intentions of some, I say some, are altruistic, but the method of getting there is trampling on our Constitution.
Right.
And, of course, a lot of these people don't care about that.
There is that, too.
Yeah, again, the individual rights is meaningless.
Yeah, I mean, for the first time, we've got a generation that doesn't care about the First Amendment, doesn't care about the Second Amendment, doesn't care about any of them. Couldn't
recite it to you if... Right. You hung them by a yard arm.
But even when they know what they are, they don't like them.
Yeah.
Free speech is dangerous.
But they know all about LGBT stuff.
Well, they do.
They know all about that. They know all about slavery, right? Or maybe they know some of it. They know it existed. And
they know what they've been taught.
Right. They regurgitate that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's amazing, when I grew up in like the 80s, there was a real respect for the national anthem, the flag, the Pledge of Allegiance, the president, if you will. And it seems like I can't believe how much that has eroded. I remember the 200th anniversary of the Constitution, September 1987.
Yeah.
Because all my friends and I, all we were doing was talking about the Twins, because that was right before the playoffs. But I remember we had Constitution Day. The principal, Mr. Dumbario, I remember his name, Italian, got on the PA and recited the Pledge of Allegiance at like a certain time with every single person in the school. And he sat and talked about the Constitutional Convention and all of that and kind of gave like a 5-minute rundown. And I remember we had talked about it previous. So I was in fourth grade, fifth grade, something like that, and it was all a day. Nobody cared about the 3/5 compromise. Nobody cared about the women didn't have the right to vote yet. I always say this: the founding fathers were not perfect people, but they created the mechanisms to which we could change the imperfections. Always remember that the amending process, had that not been there, remember the Bill of Rights was not in the original Constitution. That was passed in 1791.
Yep.
And that amending process is what allowed those mistakes to be corrected in the first place.
But, I mean, you mentioned the 3/5 clause. I know this has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But, I mean, that was actually put in the Constitution to give the South less power so that they could get rid of slavery.
Yeah.
That wasn't to denigrate black people.
No, it was all about how do you count them in the census.
They knew they couldn't just cut off slavery, that they had to do it over a period of time. And that's why the 3/5 clause was in there.
Read President Lincoln's debate with Stephen A. Douglas. He said exactly that he wanted slavery to die a natural death.
Yeah.
How do you do it? You get them off of, you change the Southern economy. You become, you industrialize, which a lot of people in the South thought might happen anyway. There were a lot of different ways to have slavery die out over time.
Yeah.
They cut off the slave trade. There was a whole lot of things. I don't know that was all foreseeable.
Right.
The Constitutional Convention, but slavery dying a natural death was something. You listen to William Lloyd Garrison, and he, in the Liberator, he put out things all the time about. I don't want to get into this; too much to talk about, but about how slavery could end peacefully, and through policy, and not through a war. He was a pacifist, so he didn't want a war. And so, but again, the whole point of government being able to come on your private property and do A, B, C, D, and E, whether the intentions are good or not, is anti everything taught in the Bill of Rights. From the Fourth Amendment to, pick your regulation, and you can find a way to make it unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Especially with no just cause. You're not supposed to be able to enter private property without just cause. So, and you wonder where this is going to stop. I mean, like I said, with the building police, the food police, the thought police, with cameras everywhere, with tracking you by your phone. Tracking you by your car. I mean, where does this end? Where does this monitoring what you're doing all the time, tracking, how you buy things? I mean, I always say this: I never, ever, ever, ever join one of these things where you get points or have a card or whatever. Never, ever do that. They sell your info. They sell what you buy. They sell your email address to God knows who.
Yeah.
And you wonder why you're like me and you have 400 emails a day and you read one of them? Somebody got your info from somebody.
Yeah. No, I'm not much of a joiner myself. I think the last thing I joined was the Columbia House CD Club back in the 90s. Yeah. Since then, I've written it off. You can't pass up 12 CDs for a penny.
Yeah, well.
Well, but the point is that as we submit ourselves to this kind of intrusion, because that's what it is. It's an intrusion into our privacy, our private data, our private possessions, our home, our children, and you think that they can't train people. I'm not saying they're doing this, but at some point you'd think that they wouldn't train people what to look for when in your home. And for a lot of the stuff, obviously, they don't need to go in your home now that they have the meters that can be read from City Hall or wherever. They're already keeping track of your water usage, and, the electric companies keeping track of your gas or your electric usage.
The one electric company you have to use.
Right. Exactly. You know, and until we come up with a better way, I mean, this is the way it's going to be. But anytime there's something new, government tries to tamp down on it. You know, they make their plans. They want to have this information so that they can bring everybody into subjection to these crazy ordinances that they come up with, you know. And, you know, we thought, wow, there was that provision in the Green New Deal about, you know, they want to, like, pretty much tear down and rebuild every building in America and make it energy efficient. Well, this is one way to do that.
Well, remember, the Green New Deal, to me, was never seriously going to be passed. It was a blueprint for every other government outside of Washington to look, I mean, it's like the government takeover of healthcare. I mean, it didn't happen in 5 minutes.
Right.
This is something that happens slowly over time. Mm-hmm. You start with Medicare and Medicaid, then it goes to S-CHIP, then it goes to Minnesota Care, then it goes to, you know, whatever and whatever, Meals on Wheels. Yeah. Then it goes to, you take the same thing and you rename it something else. You create a new class of victims, and there you are to give them whatever to put them on the government dole. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing here. Green New Deal. Nobody thinks that even Ocasio-Cortez lady knew that wasn't going to happen. Even the Larry, Darrell, and Darrell there in Congress, they knew it wasn't going to happen. What was it? It was a blueprint for, okay, this is where we want to get. Mm-hmm. I don't care what the means are that we get there. Right. We're going to get there.
Yeah.
And if it means city by city, we have to do it. If it means county by county, state by state, whatever, the people who want control, power, and everything that goes with it, they don't care how it gets done. A mob boss doesn't care how the extortion money comes in, as long as it does.
Yep.
You know, if you got to, hey, come on, we got to knock that guy off. Hey, well, you know what? So be it. Mm-hmm. You think Al Capone cared about details? No.
Oh, no.
So why does anybody think because it doesn't pass the House of Representatives means it's dead?
Yeah, that's never the case, as we've found out.
Find me anything where that's the case.
Yeah.
Anything. Go look at St. Louis Park and you'll find everything they've done. None of it's passed the legislature or the Congress. They took it upon themselves to do it themselves. Mm-hmm. And this is how it's going to do it. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Right. So if they're looking in your city of putting in these,
did we go off the rails enough there?
Well, it's all interrelated. Mm-hmm. You know, and if you want to preserve freedom and independence, you need to not let your city get on this track of benchmarking. They don't have any right to your personal information. If you are a landowner, whether that's a homeowner, owner of a commercial property, owner of a multifamily like apartment building or townhome complex, you have the right to privacy, and the government does not have the right to come in and collect data and rate you and then decide if you have the, you know, that takes away the free market as well, because if they're going to decide that you aren't as energy efficient as this other thing over here, then you get rated lower, and then people are discouraged by the government from buying or renting from you. And that's not okay. You know, people need to be able to have their privacy. They need to be able to live in their home, or buy and sell a home, or maintain an apartment building, and have a reasonable expectation. Now, we're not talking about being a slumlord and having sinks that spit up mold and whatever. You know, obviously there are concerns that you know, public health and it should dictate, especially for those who are poor and less advantaged and can't afford to live in a really nice place or whatever. There should be minimums, but that
that protect the rights of the individuals.
Exactly. this does not protect anybody's rights. This is just more of the government saying that we want to track you, we want to control you eventually.
And what you said, too, about emissions, I mean, that heads right to cars, too. Mm-hmm. You talked about parking lot maximums, and you're absolutely right that to discourage people from driving is a big part of these plans, too. Look, you only put so much regulation into a building.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a million ways to use energy, and that's one of them. Mm-hmm. But, there's everything else that goes with it, and vehicles share a big part of that.
They certainly
even
do.
all those city-owned buses or Met Council-owned or whatever they are. Anyhow, was that depressing or was that?
Well,
I don't know what that was. That was pretty.
No, I think that we made it understandable.
Oh, did we?
I think that we made it. I don't want to say exciting. It's.
Even I can't
alarming.
get exciting about that.
Alarming. Maybe that's the best word.
We're going to make it till 2050. I mean, are we really, as a country, are we really going to?
Well,
what are we going to look like in 2050? Now, think about it. That's 31 years from now.
Right.
I remember 31 years ago, 1988. That didn't, Kirk Gibson's home run. Doesn't seem like that long ago. Are we going to make it 31 more years?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I sure hope so.
I mean, it's 50-50 whether I'm alive, but I mean, still, it's just...
Oh, boy.
Well, what episode will we be on by then?
Wow,
2,000 or 3,000 or something?
It'll take 52 times, Oh.
That's right. No weeks off here, no reruns, no rating sweeps. It's just week after week of telling you stuff that, quite frankly, I'm sure is making your blood boil.
Yep. Oh. So if you see this stuff happening in your community, you see people talking about benchmarking, you hear about going to level 4 or 5 of Green Step or any of that, you know who you got to get a hold of. Us. You do that by getting a hold of us at commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That's commsolutionsmn@gmail.com, and we will get in touch with you, and we would love to hear what's going on in your community. Maybe we'll talk about it on the podcast. Maybe we'll just talk to you about how to fix it. We're going to go back and dig into what's happening in the state, and we're going to come up with something equally as frustrating next week. I promise you that. Until then, spread the word far and wide. We're so thankful that you have joined us on this journey. We love you, Minnesota. Now it's your turn to get to work.
If I get too caught